Hello guys, and welcome back to my Let's Play of Halo Wars. This is going to be the second bonus video that I do in a skirmish match, which I'll be using the Arbiter. So you'll only be seeing what one of the Covenants are capable of doing. And I do gotta say, I am not really fond of the Arbiter, so chances are I'm probably not going to be using him as best as I can be. And before I really even start, I'll tell pretty much show you guys the two things about Covenant. The only two things that are really noteworthy are they have the unique units, same thing as UNSC, and they also have leader powers, which you pretty much saw in the last video with the Prophet. For the Arbiter, his special units are suicide runs, which are powerful, and they're good at the beginning of the game, and I'll kind of tell you guys why when we start. And the second thing, his leader power is Rage, which is pretty decent if you need to kind of kill off, I guess, kind of agile enemies, or if you're kind of swarmed by a lot of enemies. But other than that, yeah, let's get started. And also, we are going to be doing Frozen Valley. So, just so you guys know. Now, Frozen Valley is probably kind of, probably my second favorite 3v3 maps. First favorite is definitely probably 14. But for Covenants, I pretty much kind of go the same route I always do. But since the temple costs 500, I can't really sit there and build two supply packs right off the bat. But I usually go with 3 and then temple, or you could go with 2 and temple. So that way you can get with, get away with upgrading your buildings right off the bat, which are kind of probably a little convenient for, what was it? Covenants, because more generally, Covenant leaders are, no, not even Covenant leaders, Covenants are kind of weak in the economy, kind of stature compared to UNSC. I was going to say, we're facing 3 arbiters. Oh yeah, and one thing that I was gonna say about suicide runs is tend usually when you're dealing with a general that is using the arbiter, you can kind of somewhat expect a suicide rush, and if you're doing a suicide rush, generally, if you go over and scout their base right off the bat, you'll kind of usually notice a temple first or second, depending on the person. I do usually see, not usually see, most people will actually build their temple first and then go on from there. So, if you are facing a general is an arbiter, and they have their temple up first, do be worried of suicide rush. And to kind of tell you guys about the suicide rush, usually when there's a suicide rush happening, you gotta worry about 1 or 2 things, and that is the arbiter hot dropping all the suicides in, and if the base is locked. If the base is locked, that is probably meaning that they are keeping their leader, not the leader, the suicides inside the base until the arbiter is right outside your base or right behind it attacking, or the suicides are kind of running towards your base. Now, one thing is, if you are facing against someone that is in a suicide rush, the one thing you do have to kind of do is you pretty much have to put a stop to the arbiter at the very early stages. If you don't get the arbiter out of the way as soon as you can, that's pretty much when the problem's gonna arise. And along with that, if you do not take care of the suicide runs before they start going towards the base, chances are you probably will end up dead. And one of the reasons why suicide rushes are so effective is, personally, I have not seen me or anyone I played with actually successfully counteract a suicide rush, because it's kind of deadly for some reasons. And usually when they do a suicide rush is because if they try to kill the arbiter with, say, warthogs or something like that, more times than not, the arbiter might probably rage and just go and kill off all the excess warthogs, so that way you pretty much are left defenseless, and even then, the arbiter will probably kind of just, what was it? I can't not even think, but the arbiter will probably always just kill off all the units and just make it more difficult for you solely to kind of counteract. But I think I've probably been talking too much about it. And one thing is, with the temple, that is pretty much where you're going to be finding your per se, armory, because you can build a medium church right off the bat. You can get your followers there and Forerunner Shield. And Forerunner Shield is helpful if you have a shield generator, or if you're using the Prophet, since he has a shield. And pretty much the Forerunner Shield is just going to make it where your shield will come back faster than it normally does. And like I was saying, the shield generator is a Covenant only building, and it's pretty useful for delaying the enemy killing off your building faster than say a human. But you also do gotta watch out for kind of building killers or scorpions. But I am just gonna kind of show you guys some of the Covenant buildings while building up my Arbiter. Now, one thing you do want to do when you get your leader out is kind of do what I've been doing with my leader, going to all the rebel bases and killing off the turrets first, and then attacking the main base. The reason you attack the turrets first is because you gain more experience than if you just kill off the building straight up. So by the time you kill off probably about 5-6 buildings, rebel buildings, my bad, that'll probably be about the time you get your Arbiter or Covenant leader up to 3 stars. And as you see, my Arbiter is already a 2-star after killing 3 buildings, and you kind of see that his main attack kills turrets in 1 blow. So it definitely is helpful for having a 3-star leader, and probably one of the most feared leaders for a 3-star are the Cheatin and Prophet. And more so, reason I would kind of have to say the Prophet is more so because once he gets to the 3rd tech, he becomes a flying unit, and that makes him more agile than he usually is, and it's easier for him to get away from ground units and ground forces compared to an Arbiter or a Brute Chieftain. But also, if there's Covenant leaders, if there's vampires, vampires can easily kind of encase our prophets, so you can't move and get away. And the only way around that is if you recall your leader, and if you recall your leader, all you have to do is go right here and leader recall for 100. And more times than not, if you're facing a Covenant leader, chances are if his leader is about to be killed, he, depending on who you're facing, 9 times out of 10, he will leader recall to make sure his leader stays alive so he can get up to 3-star, deal more damage, and he's more lethal than kind of any other units. And it definitely is worth it if you get a 3-star leader. But like I was saying, I'm not really that fond of Arbiter, so I can't really say I am good with him. And also, once you get Ghastly Vision for the Arbiter, you notice that he becomes cloaked, so I can easily go over and scout an enemy base, like so. And as you can see, the turrets can't pick me up. That's because Arbiter's cloaked, and it's kind of like what the elite honor guards of the Prophet, where they can cloak themselves and they can become invisible. So kind of enough of that. Here's Covenant's Hall, which is pretty much the same as the barracks. And pretty much here you got your main infantry squad, the grunt squad. You got jackals, which is anti-infantry, and then you got the hunters, which are the anti-vehicle. For me personally, I do have to say the jackals and hunters are probably the best anti-infantry and vehicles compared to the UNSC counterpart of the Flamethrower and Cobras. And then I'm just gonna destroy this since we don't need it. And then for the summit, which is the air pad of the Covenant, we got the engineer, which is pretty much a healing unit. And more times than not, depending what enemies you have. If you have an enemy that's, if you're up against enemies that are all Covenant, more times than not, you'll see enemies having engineers around to heal their leaders, unless you guys are playing Frozen Valley, in which case the special thing about Frozen Valley is that they have a healing span right here in the middle, so it's easier for you to heal your leader, and that's pretty much it. And as you can see in the Covenant's pretty much overall super unit, which should come as no surprise, is Scarab, and actually my bad, Uber unit. And Scarabs are pretty much the hands down the most overpowered thing in the Covenant arsenal if it's only a signal unit we're talking about. And the reason I say that is because the Scarab can do massive damage in kind of a short amount of time. But also the downside is if you're facing an Anders and Cotter, the Anders can easily freeze Scarab stop it from moving, and then the Cotter, if he has full Mac Blast, you can easily almost take out the Scarab instantaneously. So you do gotta watch out for that. Or even let alone if you're facing against a Cutter, and he has ODST and his 4 Mac Blast, you gotta be careful because the Cutter can easily position ODST around the Scarabs to stop it from moving, and that's one way Cutter can easily counteract the Scarab and stop it from moving overall and Mac Blasted, so that's kind of a nice little heads up for people if you're using a Covenant and you build a Scarab and whatnot. But enough of that. Oh, and actually one other thing is, if you're playing online and someone is going strictly for a Scarab, which would kind of be obvious because they have only warehouses on their main base and even warehouses on their secondary. If they have that, more likely than not, the Scarab will probably be accompanied by engineers, and the reason for that is because the engineers will usually heal the Scarab, and depending on the user, sorry about all the stick quotes, but depending on the user, that can become a lethal combo because what was it? Depending on how they use it, the Scarab can kind of become invincible, especially if you don't have any air units counteract the engineers or go after the Scarab if it becomes hurt. Not even notice that. But it just depends on the person who's using a Scarab and everything, like I said. And definitely another way to kind of get rid of the Scarab faster is kind of just have a massive amount of air units and kind of keep on making the air units go behind the Scarab to have the Scarab keep rotating around. And at the same time, your air units will be doing damage to the Scarab. So, I mean, there is kind of a decent amount of disadvantages using a Scarab, but it's also pretty decent. And to get off the subject of Scarabs and engineers now, along with that, you got the Covenant's Banshees, which are the main air units, which are pretty much the Hornets. And then one thing that the Covenant do also have in their air department are vampires, which are anti-air. I personally do not like vampires because they are also air units, and if UNSC builds Wolverines, it just kind of totally screws over your anti-air and air combo. for being a covenant, and kind of that's all there is with the summit. And with the covenant leader and the factory, which is the uh, vehicle depot, you kind of don't have that many wide margins of units you can actually use. Uh, Pretty much, for me personally, I kind of have to say that uh, the UNSC has a better vehicle units than the Covenant, because you got the Covenant Scos and Rays. More times than not, you're not going to see any Covenant using a factory, or if you do, it's probably usually at the beginning stages of the game and they're building Rays, and those are kind of easy to counteract. And if you do see an enemy building a factory late on, more so or not, they're probably going to be building locusts, which are building killers, and they are, for me, they're beastly if you kind of get the hot drop on the enemy, because if you transport the locust in, that kind of screws people over because they're not expecting it, and along with that, uh, if you hot drop them all in, it kind of kills the building off pretty fast, and especially if you have a shield amplifier, if that is right, that will definitely take out a building faster. So it uses the locust shield and direct attacks base, so it becomes even more deadly. And one thing I do have to kind of show is the Arbiter's Rage. With Arbiter's Rage, you pretty much come in a rage state, and you use the left thumbstick to move. But my kind of thumbstick is messed up, so yeah. And along with that, you just kind of move around and you use the right thumbstick to attack with your rage state. And like I said, the Arbiter kind of uses his rage state to kind of move towards an enemy like that and deal damage along with them. And depending on how far the Arbiter is upgraded, he'll gain health for every unit he kills, like so. And like I said, the Arbiter's rage state is primarily used to kind of kill off units faster than anything else. And like that's pretty much kind of the basics of using a Covenant leader. Although I'm not really even explaining that much. But I definitely would say it's kind of worthwhile to check out using the Covenant. Covenant was pretty much my first favorite thing that I started using. And it wasn't because of scarabs. It was more so because leaders on the front line, and you can have an additional unit, which is kind of I can't really necessarily say it's overpowered, but it's definitely good having it. And like I said, with the suicide runs, let me kind of build some to kind of show off what they do if I have the time. But suicide runs, if you use them, they are pretty much primarily used for building destruction, or what was it? Building destruction, or pretty much leader killing, and once I kind of get the grunts I need, I'll kind of show off what I mean. Although it's kind of they're kind of slow to make. Go figure. So I'm just gonna wait around so I get a decent size, and then go in and kind of suicide this space. And I guess I'll use 5. So I think 5 to 6 will kind of kill off the building if it has no buildings UNSC wise. But if you're a Covenant buildings are more so weaker than the UNSC, because actually I really don't know why, but one thing you should definitely get on your base is, if you're a Covenant, is a shield generator, because that extra protection it serves you. And since oh, screw. This is pretty much the suicide state right here. They'll start glowing and just run in and suicide the base, or suicide your target. And they pretty much do a pretty decent sum of damage, so it's kind of worth it. But if you're using suicide runs, they count as death, and it goes negative against the score. So some people don't. Some people, if they want to get a big score, they won't actually use suicide runs for that reason. But for generals, they'll use it because pretty much they don't care. Most generals just sit there and just rush, just to get the game over with, just to show how quote-unquote skilled they are at the game and stuff like that. And I personally don't rush because I see no point in it and no skill needed to actually rush. It's kind of pointless in my book. All you're showing is that, oh, you can build units faster and you can actually I don't know. I'm really kind of just getting tired, so my brain's like shutting off on me. But no. But I have personally never really used suicide runs, so I can't really say how effective they are and whatnot. And let alone, I really don't even use the Arbiter that much when I use the Covenant. So, pretty much overall, I can't really even say anything, but oh well. At least I'm kind of showing you guys what they can do. And like I said, you do have to watch out, because if you are dealing with a Covenant, if they have Jackals will probably easily take out the suicide grunts, and you definitely have to watch out for that. And like I kind of say, when you're playing the multiplayer game, you do want to take over the bases to kind of get an idea where the enemy is, if they are looking for base to take. And one thing I do like about Scarabs are the fact that they can climb over mountains like those, and they can easily attack bases over mountains. So they are definitely they definitely have their advantages, even if they do have disadvantages. So that was kind of example of how to use an arbiter. Well, actually, probably a terrible example of how to use an arbiter. But when you're using covenant leaders, more so or not, you're probably going to be using the same strategy, even if you're using a brute chieftain or a prophet. You're probably going to be using the same strategy and everything like that. The only difference is the leader power and uh, what special units they have, and the special units kind of vary depending on. The special units kind of vary on how good they are from one to another, and how often you'll actually see the units. But I kind of hope that. Sorry about that. But I kind of hope that you guys learn a thing or two about the Covenant side, let alone if the Arbiter was. I showed you guys how to use the Arbiter again or not. But like I said, I hope you guys learn a thing or two about the Covenant leaders and Covenant structure and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and hope you guys will enjoy what else there is to come, bonus wise and campaign and all that stuff. So see you guys in the next episode, whatever it may be, and hope you guys have a good day, night, whatever. And I'm just gonna shut up now.